Thank you for coming and welcome to those who just arrived. My name is Mindy Gibson and I'm the manager and the librarian, the only one, at the Hanapembe Public Library. And we are excited to have Jaslee Crowley here tonight to present about what is known as a Bodhi tree. And she's a graduate research student at the Oregon State University. And she and her colleague are visiting here, and Jaslee's been here before, doing research related to a tree that's located right down the street here in Hanapembe at the Soto Zen Buddhist temple. And we've got Jerry Hirata from there. We're here to hear from Jaslee Crowley. I'm so glad to have you here, and when I got the call from Jerry about the potential program about the Bodhi tree, I was like, okay, but I got the forest birds on the same day, and I got to make this work. So I called them up, and then we made it work. And it turns out that your talk and your topic actually address what my concern was. Like, it's an invasive species, this tree that's over there, that has the religious significance. And they were talking about wanting to propagate it and divide it and share it and make more trees, so other people on Hawaii could have this invasive species. So I was really relieved when she let me know, or Jerry, through Jerry, the topic actually addresses that very concern that I had. And the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project were more than willing to allow us to share the evening. So we're very pleased to have you, Jaslee, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So I'm Jaslee. This is a presentation that I've given a couple times now, but I tailored it more toward y'all here in Kauai. So this is my advisor, D. Denver. If any of you went to his talk last year, that was at the Lihue Public Library. He presented a little bit more on the genetics of the tree, which I'll get into a little bit, but I'm more talking about its impact and cultural significance in Kauai. Who am I? Like I said, I'm Jaslee, or Jazz, like the music is a little easier. I'm a second year PhD, so going into my third year. This is my second year of field research here in Kauai, and I'm at Oregon State University. And so my degree is in biology. Oh, and this is my research team with Dana. Dana's here with me. She's our lab manager, or lab mom, so she's here to chaperone me the whole time. So the Bodhi tree, what is it? Its scientific name is Ficus religiosa. So it's just a fig tree, and a lot of you know figs because they're edible and yummy to a lot of people except me. But this tree doesn't have the edible figs, and that's always the first question people have. Can you eat it? And no, not really. Elephants like to eat it, apparently, but it's not the ones that you typically see, and it's also not those big strangler figs. You see those all around Kauai, with the giant roots that kind of take over. It's related, but it doesn't have those strangling roots. So this is the one. This is at the Mahabodhi temple, which I'll talk more about. But this is an example of what it looks like. So it looks more like a normal tree. Doesn't have those big roots. It doesn't have the big figs. So where have you seen it on Kauai? Probably the two most likely locations are either at the Soto Zen temple down the road here by the cannon statue, or the tree that is over by the state building in Lihue. It's right in front of the state building. It's really big. Those are probably, or some of you who might live in Kekaha. It's a little more nondescript, but it's behind one of the fences at the sugar plantation right across from I think it's an elementary school. There's another one over there. So there's a few on the island, but those are the ones you probably have seen. It is known as the Tree of Enlightenment. It is the type species, so for ficus. It is religiosa is its Latin name because it is really a sacred plant to both Hinduism and Buddhism, because for many reasons. In Buddhism, it's because it's where the Buddha became enlightened under about 2,500 years ago, where he's believed to be enlightened under. And so it's considered extremely sacred. So there's the Bodhi tree, that is supposed to be this singular tree that he was resting under, and then there are the many Bodhi trees that are just related either directly to this tree or just of the same species. So it's been represented in art for many years, and one of the side projects of my degree is art history. So I study how this tree has shown up through history in different artistic representations. For a while on the right, it was practiced that you couldn't actually depict the Buddha in any artwork. So often he was represented through different symbols, sometimes feet, sometimes the Dharma wheel, or sometimes the Bodhi tree. So there's the moments where it's the diamond throne that he would have been on, and then there's the Bodhi either behind it, representing the Bodhi tree, or directly on it, representing the Buddha himself. It's shown up in artwork. There's pressings of the leaves. This one on the right here is one of my favorites. It's with this one, you can tell it's probably from areas of Pakistan because the Buddha has a mustache. He is walking to the Bodhi tree, and Mara is challenging him with all the other temptresses around. And then there's the little earth goddess down at the down there where she's witnessing the Buddha and his enlightenment, and it's all centered around the Bodhi tree. So there's many thousand-year-old pieces of art that represent this. But on to what I do. So the first location I'm talking to you about really quick is Nepal. That is where I went last summer. And it is important because it is one of the main native regions of the Bodhi tree, so where it actually comes from. Where the Buddha was born was in Nepal, and where he became enlightened was right near the Nepal-India border, but it's actually in India. Nowadays, on the border of India. And we went near there. Up there, they practice more, where I was in Kathmandu, more Tibetan Buddhism. So you see more of this style of temple, of stupa, or these sort of Hindu temples. There's little Hindu shrines, and on top of it would be these Bodhi trees. So it was incorporated throughout the entire country, everywhere. Sidewalks, buildings, inside of buildings, there would be the little ones on the gutters, but the big ones all always had prayer flags or Hindu threads, oils, just all around it. Some of the times the trees were nearly so overcome by everything that they would be dying because people would be putting so many offerings on this tree. Other ways that it's unique, this is me underneath a giant one, and which was planted on top of a mini temple that would be about the size of this, that people would crawl into and actually show penance under. And so I'm assuming at one point this tree was just a little one that they put on top of it, but now it's kind of overcome the entire temple, which is many hundreds of years old. So that one was really cool. In Nepal, I think it's a Hindu practice mainly, but there's a lot of synergy between Hinduism and Buddhism over there. They nearly exclusively, you always saw the Bodhi tree planted with a ban tree or the banyan tree, a bar. They called it the bar tree or the banyan tree. So they're considered married in Nepal. So they always planted those two together. The ficus religiosa is the female, according to legend, and the bar tree would be male. Sometimes it's associated with a different god. Many locals there told me that you cannot sleep underneath a Bodhi tree, otherwise ghosts will come and attach to you. So there was a ton, I got to talk to a lot of people there and talk about their own legends. So as Buddhism is a missionary project, right? A lot of Buddhist missionaries went through the world and spread Buddhism. And along with Buddhism went this tree, because often people would bring cuttings of this tree to the different temples around the world as thank yous, as offerings. We were just talking today about one in Kyoto. There's a tree in Kyoto that was one of the oldest trees that was brought, one of the first ones that was considered an offering from a monk from Sri Lanka, brought to Kyoto. And that one's many hundreds of years old as well. So first it started, this image comes from iNaturalist, where I plugged in Ficus religiosa, and all the red dots are all of them. So you can see in Southeast Asia, where it's from, there's a ton of instances of Bodhi trees, and then you see where it starts to radiate out toward introduced zones. So all the way now here in Hawaii. How did it get here though? Anagarika Dharmapala, he was alive from 1864 to 1933. He was a Buddhist missionary and activist from Sri Lanka. So he was going around and kind of preaching the word, and also trying to bring about the Buddhism that used to be and what he felt like was falling apart. So he went around the world doing a lot of talks, doing a lot of activism. He helped renovate the Mahabodhi temple. This is exactly where the Buddha was supposed to be enlightened. This temple, in the 1870s, it had become the red light district of this area. So it had become pretty trashed. No one was holding this space in reverence anymore. And so Anagarika Dharmapala created the Mahabodhi Society, which became more of a charity effort, trying to bring money back into India to build up these temples, help the communities in the area. And now, 2019, it is considered, again, a really beautiful space. Many monks go there, many tourists go there. But how was this funded? Maybe some of you have heard of Mary Foster. If you're on Oahu, there's the Foster Botanical Gardens. So she was one of the major funders of this Mahabodhi temple being rebuilt. So she was alive from 1844 to 1930. She was Hawaiian, I think her mother was Hawaiian, and she was born and lived in Oahu and was very close friends with Queen Liliuokalani. When Queen Liliuokalani was put under house arrest, she was allowed 2 people to come visit her, and Mary Foster was one of them. In that time, she met Anagarika Dharmapala while he was visiting the islands. I can't remember her name right now, but local to Kauai, maybe Oahu, wrote a book on Mary Foster that's really good, and it's at the Lohu Public Library. Maybe there's one here. I don't know.
I will check.
Yeah, it's a good one. But she wrote all about this, and that's where I got all this information. But while this was all occurring, when Queen Liliuokalani was under that house arrest, and Anagarika Dharmapala came through, kind of spreading Buddhism, he talked with Mary Foster, and she spoke of a lot of the injustices that were occurring on the island, and talking about these feelings. And he ended up kind of talking Buddhism with her. And so she converted to Buddhism and was responsible for a lot of the Buddhism that did come to the island, and personally helped fund the reconstruction of the Mahabodhi temple. So in thank you, he brought her a very large branch of that original Bodhi tree that was brought to the temple through a series of events. That original tree supposedly was brought to the temple. He brought her one branch of it, which she placed in the Foster Botanical Gardens, which were then donated to Honolulu after she died. Many of these cuttings in turn were brought to the islands, including the Soto Zen Temple, I believe. So the Soto Zen Temple here has a direct cutting from the Foster tree. So I'm really interested in tracing these trees. So we can say, well, because of the really big historical importance each tree has through this long lineage. From Foster comes the Bodhi tree at the temple. The one in Keikaha doesn't seem to have, as far as I can tell, any particular religious ties to that space, but it would be believable that someone would bring it for religious purposes, or like someone who practiced this from Japan. And it is right in the sugar plantation area. So if anyone knows anything, I'd be really interested in finding out, because it is directly in front of the school, it's directly in front of the plantation area. So I feel like there's some interesting ties there that I'd like to know about. The Lehui tree in front of the state building, we've asked about it there. The best they can say it was planted during World War II. And that is all I know about that tree. So I'm still trying to learn about it. And then there's a tree that belongs to a celebrity who shall go unnamed, up near Princeville. that they were given a Bodhi tree that they smuggled here in the 90s, that they planted in their front yard, so it's on private property, that has now grown into a very large tree. There's a couple more trees on the island, but those are some of the most significant mother trees that I've found, which are pretty interesting. So why am I here and why do I care? This is a bit of an explosion of a slide, but as a quick rundown, I'm doing transdisciplinary science, where I'm trying to do science that is not just biology. I'm trying to bring in many different disciplines in equal standing into my PhD, especially around this tree because it has so much going on with it, not just the biology. So I will talk about the Buddhism, which is why I'm here in Kauai, why I'm hanging out at the Soto Zen Temple so much. I'm really interested in visual culture and art history, so I've been, wherever I go, searching for this tree. I've been trying to learn more about the artwork in that space that utilizes the Bodhi tree, and then of course the biology of the tree, where I really get into naturalization and genetics work. So a lot of those are coming together into my PhD. So for Buddhism on Kauai, last year was our first year here. These were some pictures that were taken of me and my team over at the Bon dance. I danced for so long and was so exhausted, and I can't wait to do it again this week. So I've been trying to just learn more about the community here and become friends with y'all because you're really cool and fun. And it's such a unique fusion of Buddhism, of Japanese culture, of Hawaiian culture, like such a long history that is so unique to this space that I think is really worth talking about and worth learning about. And I just want to be among it and not just read about it, So that's why I'm really happy to be doing my fieldwork here. The visual culture in Kauai, I've already been learning about Oshibana, which hasn't utilized the Bodhi leaves too much, but I've been seeing Bodhi leaf art cropping up everywhere. This is, on the right here is Ellen's work, and just cool ways that the leaf gets represented here. In Florida, my other location, I saw it in a lot of interesting statues and paintings there that was really unique to the space. I hadn't seen that. So giant Buddha statues with using the Bodhi tree as an umbrella for the Buddha, which was just really interesting.
And then in Florida?
That's in Florida. And then in Nepal, they use it on a lot of different artwork. They dry out the leaves and then paint directly onto the leaves, or they'll use the leaves as pressings, or they'll even use the fruits of the ficus tree and make them into malas or prayer beads sometimes. So it's utilized in artwork in many different ways. That special tapered heart shape is really unique to the tree, and people really like to utilize it for that look. It's also just so associated with Buddhism that it's really inherent to the practice to use it. And it's considered often this sacred, a sort of sacred work to use the tree, to propagate the tree, to continue, to continue utilizing it is creating good karma in many ways. So it's really neat in that visual culture sort of way. For the biology side, I do genetics work on this tree, and so in simple terms, have any of you heard of Ancestry.com or learning about your DNA? So we're doing that, but for the Bodhi tree, because it has been interesting to be able to trace the lineages and how they move throughout the world. Because we have been able to find, through a lot of the work that Dana has done, and the person who came before me, Subi, we have been able to find a specific genetic DNA type that is associated with that tree, that original tree, and then we are able to compare it to other DNA types that are not of that tree, and then see how it has been moving around the world, and kind of create a map of this DNA lineage, and see if we can make those associations. So here we see Kauai. To break it down, a haplotype, I won't get too much into it, but it's basically that DNA type, or a unique DNA label that we're speaking to. In the hot pink are the adult sacred haplotypes. So the adult sacred DNA types we have found through our DNA work are associated with that sacred tree in India now. So down here with the star is supposed to be the one at the Soda Zen temple. The other one with the star over there is at the Hindu monastery. And that one you can see is in blue because it is not of that particular sacred lineage. And it's the only one on the island thus far we found that is like that, which is pretty interesting. The pink kind of gradient shows the trees that have babies that I've found in the area. And then there's one tree that's very important. It's the square hot pink one. The reason it's important is because it is the first offspring I've found that is also producing fruit. So it is the F2 generation, is the next generation that is actually producing viable fruit on the island. This goes into me studying the naturalization of this tree. So this that I'm doing is an ongoing 3-year project. I'm in year 2 now. So I would like to do this another year just to keep watching this growth. So we have been going to each mother tree and seeing, is it producing fruit, how's its health, and what is it looking like in the surrounding area in terms of offspring rate of growth and spread. And measuring, is that declining, is that getting larger, is there an increase? We're also trying to study for more environmental impacts of it. The Kauai Invasive Species Committee wrote a good write-up on it, I think in 2017, that was talking about how some of the impacts related could be the destruction of like cement, like getting into cement. Because guess what you have on this island that these trees love are lava rock fences. They love this sort of thing. So I grow these trees in my lab. They don't want to grow in Oregon, so I don't have a problem just growing them there because they can't really become introduced. They need a lot of sun and a lot of heat, and we don't have that. But I put them in these nice little pots. They get their fertilizer. I give them love, and they hate it. They don't like it. You come out here, you like throw it at a crack and throw a seed at in the ground, not in the ground. They don't like soil. They want cement buildings. And you just like put in the worst environment with all the trash, and they love it. They thrive. They're like the dandelions of these things. So it's pretty interesting. So they love those like weird little spaces. You'll never see them in a nice location, I feel like. Why is this important now, though? So this has been here for about 70, 80 years-ish, depending on when some of the, I can't really mark the exact year some of these trees came, but they've been here for a while. So why don't we see them everywhere if it's an invasive and or an introduced tree and we're worried about it? Why am I only seeing offspring really happen now? And the major thing is the pollinator wasp. So it's believed or is known this ficus tree could only reproduce with a particular wasp. And as long as that wasp wasn't on the island, well, it won't reproduce. So we're not worried about it. The Kauai Invasive Species Committee said that that wasp came sometime, maybe because of the bonsai trade, in 2007. And like that, we're starting to see the offspring. So this wasp, that's a picture of the fruit. So like I said, it's really small, about the size of your thumbnail. Which makes the wasp, most people think yellow jackets when I'm saying wasp. Not that. It's like a tiny, microscopic, brown little wasp. They don't sting. You can barely see them. They crawl inside the fruit and pollinate it. And so it is allowing the trees to propagate. That's where this issue is suddenly becoming an issue now, where we didn't see it as an issue before, because suddenly this pollinator is here. There could also be potentially other pollinators. Over at the National Tropical Botanical Garden, they wrote a really interesting paper that kind of launched a lot of my studies, where they were saying maybe other pollinators are also starting to adapt to being able to pollinate the Bodhi tree, or in turn, maybe this pollinator is able to start pollinating other figs on the island. So they had some reason to believe that in a paper that I read that was like really introductory, and so I'm wanting to see if that's true as well. So I'm also studying this wasp on the island and seeing how that's contributing to this whole issue. So location 3 is Florida. I was there about 2 weeks ago with Dana again. why is Florida important in this story? Maybe you've heard that Florida is a wasteland for invasive species. It's just so many invasives there. And so it's a really great place to kind of see, and including the Bodhi tree, what kind of happens when an invasive tree goes into a space that's kind of similar to Kauai environmentally. I don't have as much good data there because in terms of history yet. I haven't been there as long, and also it's kind of everywhere. So it's really hard. Here, we have like 7 specific trees. I can really learn about the history of each one. Dana and I had to stop collecting at some point because there's just too many trees there to count. And we went from Tampa to the Everglades to Miami, all the way down to this tree in Key West, which is a really good example of a tree that might be similar to one in Kauai. So why is it there? It's a really beautiful ornamental, so a lot of people seem to bring it there. They saw a lot of them in the medians in the road, so the cities were actually planting them there, but also because of a lot of Buddhist temples there as well. There's one Buddhist temple chain that actually was in every city made sure that a Bodhi tree was in their area. So I'm still just trying to dig into the data we collected from that, but it's a good kind of balance to see how it's doing in Florida and how it's doing here at the same time. So what do we do about this Bodhi tree on the island of Kauai? I am not from here, so I just want to bring the information to you, but you are the people who are the actual stakeholders in this. This is your island, and there's a lot of importance, of course, for you, especially with invasives, why I know that's a major issue here. So on one hand of this story is the representation of the sacred tree. It has a lot of religious significance for a really good reason. It is under thousands of years of being really important to many people. It's important here to multi-generational island groups. It is very historical, associated with historical people and different things that have happened on the islands. It's also on private property, so it's not just on public areas. And thus far, the spread has been slow to a certain extent. The version of the introduced tree is it's a non-native species, and for some people that's a non-starter. If we have a non-native, some people think that those just shouldn't be on the island at all. And with a pollinator insect, that adds some complication. I'm nearly to the question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely will want some. Which is also introducing another non-native, and is also introducing its own issues. There's the potential of the destruction of property through some of that cement sort of issues. And then we don't know other impacts it might have, which is worth mentioning. And the spread could increase, like we see amongst many invasives. So there's a big balance of the significance and of this the potential issues that could be happening. But both are really valid things to be thinking about in this way. So what have I been doing? I just went to an ethnobiology conference and presented this work on a lot of what I just told you about, talking more about this quandary, gathering a lot of information from people there. I'm continuing my data collection for my PhD, started last year, continuing into next year, and I'm still continuing that genetic and naturalization analysis. So we're about, Dana and I this summer are ready to just do a relay race of doing all the genetic work for all those Florida trees and seeing where do they come from. Are any of them sacred? Are any of them not sacred? Can we trace it at all? And the naturalization analysis on the island. So every year as I'm coming back, what are we seeing? How is this changing? Continuing that work as well to bring you guys also more information about this. So I want to say thank you to the temple, the library, to Jerry, to my lab, to OSU, and to the Oshibana group for having us the other day. Thank you. And I'm excited to see people at the Oban Festival. But for now, I really want to bring it back to this. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Next year, I'm hoping to come back and maybe do some more formal interviews because your point of view is a really important aspect of my research. But for now, I'm interested in any questions you might have about the tree, whether it be the art, the biology, the Buddhism, or what I'm doing or what I will be doing, or if you have any thoughts or opinions of your own right now. So we have a little bit of time for that, about 15 minutes. And so I'm happy to take questions or give thoughts.
Sorry, I was late. But so, really quick, the sacred tree, is it just one tree or is it a group of trees?
So there's the one tree that the Buddha
Right.
became enlightened under,
Yes.
but it's related, it is a type from the species that is spread far and around. Some of them are directly related to that tree, some are just the same.
But when you say sacred tree, you just mean like that group of trees.
Yes, some
Right.
associated with the genetic lineage of that
Right.
tree.
And then the introduced tree is a different species?
Sorry for the confusion on the way I presented that. It's the same tree, so they're both trees. It's the different concepts around this tree. It is both an introduced tree and it is also sacred.
Got it. We're talking about the same tree, different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much. That's very
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Thank you. And I have a question. So back to the map you had, and you said there are 7 trees you've identified, and I think I understand
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah.
that, so all of those are the same species, the Ficus religiosa, but only 2 of them have the DNA direct link to the Bodhi tree, what's known to be the original Bodhi in India.
All of them, actually 6 out of the 7.
6 of them.
Yeah.
So other than that DNA link, is there any difference at all between these trees as
No.
far as their
Yeah, not functional.
descriptions, the way they behave?
But
Yes.
the one is 2,000 years old.
Yeah, one of them's so old.
Which
It's
one
the
is that?
oldest historical tree in the world.
Which one is that one?
That one's in Sri Lanka.
Oh, that one, yes. Okay.
And that's related to these trees.
I have a question going back to the pollinator.
Yeah.
So, is it known whether or not this wasp can pollinate other trees, other invasive species?
So that's what I'm interested in finding
Okay.
out.
And do you know if there are any native predators of this wasp?
The way predators in this, so the way it would have a predator in this case would be through birds eating the fruit, which would compete for, so these bugs, they lay their eggs in the fruit, and then those babies come out of the fruit and pollinate. So one way would be birds coming and eating the fruit would be one of the predators, but there's not really a specific predator to these.
So if, without that predator, I guess, yeah, you answered my question, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
What does it take for a species to become naturalized?
So that, different opinions on that. One would be, one take is it producing viable offspring? So like, are offspring occurring? So in that way we could say yes. Some people would say, no, that's not enough. Are the offspring producing offspring? And for a while we would have said no, but then we found that other one that was producing. So in that way, yes, its offspring are producing offspring. So naturalization has like some squishy ideas. The idea is, can it live here properly? So the answer would have been, well, is the environment suitable? Yes. And in this case, can it reproduce? And for a while the answer was no. And now that it can reproduce, the answer has become, yes, it is naturalizing.
And what has changed so that it now can reproduce between?
The fact that pollinator came.
Really?
Yeah, so that pollinator is
This
specific.
wasp?
Yep. It's specific to the tree and is allowing it to even be able to propagate.
And you said it was through what trade or what, like the
They postulated the bonsai trade,
bonsai? Okay.
but it could have come through like many different things.
Sure.
So I don't want to like.
No,
tap
yeah,
too much on
yeah.
that.
And where's the one in Lihui, the tree in Lihui?
The one in Lihui is right in front of the state building.
State building.
There's the civic center, and then the state building's behind the civic center.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, in the news.
Yeah.
Okay, so are the Bodhi trees that are on Kauai, is there any known impact that they have already made to any native plants, native species of animal, or?
From what I know of, no. It doesn't seem to be propagating at any rate that is competitive. It also is a really slow growing tree, especially to its fruiting stage. It takes many, many years. So it doesn't seem to be outcompeting anything at this point necessarily. It's not poisonous. I see a lot of the mynas in it specifically. Doesn't mean there's not other birds in it, but I see those a lot.
The common myna?
Yeah, I know those aren't native, but yeah, so like it doesn't seem to be harming anything in particular at this point. So, and in some ways people would say it's only invasive once it begins harming things or outcompeting native species. So that also is a kind of tick against the fact it is bad, necessarily. Yeah.
You were saying that that one tree has just started fruiting. How long ago did it start fruiting?
The
one in Waimea, right?
Yeah, Waimea, we found one here, the Sotozen one, the Lahui, and the one near Kilauea. Those are all fruiting.
They're all fruiting.
Yeah, and that would have started happening 15 years ago.
So potentially, if they're fruiting and you have birds eating the berries, the birds could potentially be spreading those seeds through their feces.
Yeah. Yes.
Very widely.
Yes.
But
Thus
we
far,
haven't seen it yet.
so the kind of interesting thing thus far is I think it's mainly the chickens that are spreading them because it's mainly all low-lying areas that the offspring are. And David and I are looking and they don't go too far ever. Like there's this like limit of where these trees will grow. Doesn't mean that that doesn't happen, but it kind of gets back into my whole they like to grow in terrible areas idea. When we went to Nepal, where this has been around for thousands of years, we couldn't find any in our like very like just what we were seeing. They were never in areas that were just forest. It was always in the cities or like in the ground on cement. You never saw them really growing anywhere else.
That is dope as heck.
Yeah,
I
so
love it.
yeah, it's really interesting. So in one way, it's maybe there's this kind of like they can't really grow in these nice forest areas. I don't know, but you don't seem to see them anywhere other than these like more urban areas. Yeah, Jerry.
So you talk about 7 trees, but all those larger amorphous circles within that area, there's a bunch of little seedlings that are
In the
growing
like
naturally?
pink kind of
Yeah.
those are where all those offspring are.
They're just
Last
not
year I
big enough to
counted.
call a tree.
Yeah, they're like this big.
Yeah.
Those, or they're non-fruiting. Those last year, so I counted 70 minus 7, so 63. 63 babies. And then this year we've only looked at the Lahui tree thus far because we've only been here a couple days. But that one definitely has had an increase that I've seen. Again, this is like just what we were looking at, where we counted like 30-something trees the other day. So I don't have numbers for this year yet, but I'm still moving forward.
A question, going back to the art.
Yeah.
For the Hawaiian Islands, here, do you have any, this one here, do you have other samples of art from either the trees or the leaves?
Not yet. So I brought some over to the Oshibana group the other day. So they were talking about making some. I have seen some pressed on like clothes and some of these, and I saw a few that were also painted on, but I didn't see any pictures yet. So I've been seeing them, like done like this, which I think are really cool.
What is the Oshibana group? Or?
So yeah.
So the Friends of the Hanapep Public Library, they meet here every Wednesday morning. And they've been doing that for decades. And they make pressed flower art. Usually they make gift cards or bookmarks and other related items. Diana over here is one of their members. And yes, and they sell those products to benefit the library.
Got it. Okay.
It's a really cool.
I didn't realize you were here.
Yeah, it's a really cool Japanese art that, we were talking about how it's been here for a very long time.
Cool.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Can I just ask a question of you? because I'm part of this Oshibana group and we're looking at those leaves, is
Yeah.
it disrespectful in any way if we don't have the entire leaf to be used, if we like cut parts of it off so there's like, would that be considered
I
disrespectful or
wouldn't think so, I
upsetting?
don't know, because, I think most of the population here on Kauai are just not familiar with the
Are not
tree
what?
itself, are not familiar with the tree. And maybe it's association with Buddhism.
Right.
Of course, we are, but we just haven't been around it long enough to really understand or know really what's happening. We just know it's a nice tree. We know that the tree came from Mary Foster. And then people like Jasley, I think, are enlightening us
Yes.
as to what's happening. But what is so interesting about that tree is that when Jasley came last year, I had to point to her and said, look, how did this little tiny, what do you call this, twig or
Like
sapling?
an offspring, yeah, like
An
the sapling.
offspring.
Sapling, yeah.
That offspring was on our marble statue in between the cracks. So I pointed it out to Jasley. I said, how did you get there, But the tree is nearby. And then 6 months later, I found another offspring at the bell tower. And the bell tower is lava rock, I found it again in a tiny little crack in that lava rock. And now I was telling Jed, well, what should I do when I see one? Should I just pluck it out?
Because it would seem like it would eventually crack the concrete or whatever structure.
I guess if you
it's in,
left
right?
it in there long enough, yeah.
Wow.
Just for the art piece in Nepal, I see it used in a lot of different ways. So from what I've witnessed, the actual use of it, if you cut it or use it in any particular way, it's not considered disrespectful. The fact that you're just using it is a good thing.
Because it's like spreading the tree, the essence of the tree, right, to
Mhm.
people.
Yeah, even the essence of it.
So to expand on this idea of disrespectful, but also this invasiveness, is there any blasphemy or religious significance if one would just say, okay, there's 7 trees, let's weed all of the little saplings and get rid of them? Is that blasphemy or?
So there's a lot of different takes on this way. So the Buddha said that it is written that the Buddha said, this tree is an extension of myself.
Oof.
And so in some ways, and some I've been finding in different Buddhist scriptures, they talk about how important this tree is. So one piece that was like a thousand-year-old text, it was saying, what do we do when there is a temple which is sacred that is being defaced or is crumbling because of a Bodhi tree growing into it?
Oof.
Which is more important? And the book didn't give any answer. So they were saying, like, even monks 1,000 years ago were like, ooh, hard to tell which one is more important, a temple or the Bodhi tree. And so that kind of complicates things in terms of blasphemy. When I went to one person, there's been a few people now where I've been traveling, where they've said Isaac Newton sat beneath an apple tree and an apple fell on his head. And he, started to spread his knowledge. And the Buddha sat beneath a Bodhi tree, and he attained enlightenment. It could have been any tree. It could have been anywhere. We don't actually care. It's just a location. So even within Buddhism, there's you don't want to generalize too much. Some practices they consider it like a cool-looking tree, or like something that's nice. Some practices consider it an extension of the Buddha himself. So I'd say it is, I don't know. Some might also say what if it's not of that sacred genetic lineage? Or also, is the little ones that were purposefully planted, do they matter as much? So my answer is I don't know, and that's where this whole philosophy is kind of coming in.
That reminds me of two things can be true at once, right? So
Oh yeah,
that's
the
really cool.
cognitive dissonance of
Yes,
it can be
yes.
a little hard to handle, and that's why I'm not here to give my own opinion. It's a lot about what y'all think of this, because you're here living amongst this tree, and that's why it's important to bring up has the introduced situation, and we're not fans of introduced trees on Kauai, but it's also sacred, and it's very important. And so this ethical quandary coming together is worth talking about, and kind of putting it in your hands. And I'm going to be coming back and doing this work for another, going to do it this year, going to do it next year. And I want to bring the information back to you in whatever way I can, because it's all very interesting, but you're the ones hopefully who would be inheriting a lot of this. So thanks so much for letting me talk.